Gorgio. Oh, come on, don't act like you never tried it. Okay, so this, I wanna revisit Harry Potter, but in a more fun, way less critical fashion than I have the first, well, last most of the times that I've talked about the franchise on here. Because the thing is, I actually really enjoy Harry Potter. I enjoyed the world, I enjoyed those characters, I enjoyed those books, I enjoyed the first 8 movies to varying degrees. And I don't love the fact that since I've started talking about Harry Potter on here, all I've really had to talk about is stuff that I haven't liked much. So let's just have a bit of fun. Silly, goofy, vaguely inappropriate fun. So, Hogwarts is a school, and schools, of course, have curriculums. Now, schools, in theory, are supposed to do more than simply teach academics. They are supposed to, in fact, prepare kids for the world beyond the walls of the school. And Hogwarts does seem, or at its best, when it's not being run by Umbridge, does appear to try and do that with its various classes. You know, there's the practical stuff like potions and herbology, but there's also things that are less likely to go to a direct career, like defense against the dark arts. Yes, maybe some people will want to be an Auror, but like plenty just, that's good basics to know. Now, it's been noted before that there are a lot of what would, to us muggles, be very necessary stuff like, say, math, that don't appear to be part of the curriculum. But there's one thing that I remember as part of my education that I not only wonder, is it part of the Hogwarts curriculum? I want to know, how is it different? And that's sex ed. Because I've got some questions about how some of this works in the wizarding world. And I'll just go through various elements, you know, based off my own memory of sex education and the sorts of things that I would think would be covered or just like might come up in the course of these kinds of conversations if you're trying to relay especially if you're trying to relay the information to students. So some of these questions are like about like what would be on the curriculum, but others just, is a heck of a lot of sex questions about about the Harry Potter world. Okay, that's a lot of preamble for this premise. Let's get going. First question, birth control. Now, we know that wizards and witches don't make use of muggle medicine. So, birth control by pill, or even really prophylactic, probably not in the cards. So, are there birth control charms? Since they could theoretically be cast either on a woman's womb, or a guy could like cast some sort of temporary sterility on his sperm, is there the same sort of societal expectation that birth control is a women's thing to be responsible for? Is that the same in Wizarding Society, since theoretically if they're using magic, either gender should be equally as capable of making use of those kinds of charms on themselves? If it's charms and if it's things like that, can they be countered? If they are, and it's done so without the knowledge of the person whose birth control spell you countered, is that a sex crime? If birth control fails, what are the remedies on that? I don't really want to dive down the rabbit hole of this, but I'm just going to toss it out there. Is magical abortion a thing? Or at the very least, you know, magical morning after pill? Oh, I gotta wonder. But of course, pregnancy is not the only concern when you are dealing with teenagers with raging hormones, which Hogwarts has in spades. There's also the wonderful world of sexually transmitted diseases. Oh boy. Now, I did actually do something I oh so rarely do. I did a tiny bit of research. So I was wondering what is the deal with sort of disease and that sort of thing in the wizarding world? I figured there had to be something there, but I didn't want to make assumptions. So I actually looked up what J.K. Rowling herself said on Pottermore, and I'm going to quote here. So what she said was, broadly speaking, wizards have the power to correct or override, quote, mundane nature, but not magical nature. Therefore, a wizard could catch anything a muggle might catch, but he could cure all of it. He would also comfortably survive a scorpion sting that might kill a muggle, whereas he might die if bitten by a venomous tentacula. So basically what that means is, if it originates from the wizarding world, whether that be through an actual spell or a magical creature, or just some sort of disease that, and she does cite examples of diseases that are unique to the wizarding world, like dragon pox. So they do exist, and those sorts of diseases don't have instantaneous magical cures. It's why Mad-Eye Moody had to have, granted there was still magic in it, but it had to have a prosthetic eye, and he couldn't just magic himself a new eye. So they're not going to have our sexually transmitted diseases, but what kind of weird, bizarre, magic STDs are they going to have? Like, is there an STD that makes your genitals detach? Not like in a leprosy rotted off way, but just detach and go off, wander off and do their own thing. Like, what sort of stuff do you got to watch out for? What is the wizard clap like? That's kind of what I'm wondering here. And I don't know. All right, next I'm going to bring up something that kind of relates to the birth control, since I started there. Interspecies sexual relationships. We know they happen because we have characters like Hagrid, who is half giant. And nobody seems to make a deal of that. I mean, people pick on Hagrid, but they pick on Hagrid because they think he's dumb. Not because they're like picking on his heritage. Not even to the extent that like they do with Muggleborns or Mudbloods. So it does seem that, you know, maybe insofar as they would be considered a form of Mudblood, or maybe Hagrid even isn't, because, I mean, a giant is still part of the magical world, so maybe it's not even as bad. So it does seem like interspecies relationships, or at least humanoid interspecies relationships, are not that frowned upon, or at least not a huge deal is made of them. So, some questions about that. Which species are capable of actually producing offspring? So we know giants and humans. What if a human had intercourse with a goblin or a troll? I don't think you'd want to, but theoretically. Even though I think it's safe to assume that humanoid interspecies couples are acceptable, we still don't see any, so is it still kind of thought of as weird? Is there a limit? Because given what is or isn't sentient in the Harry Potter universe, like, is a centaur too far away from being human? Do ghosts have ongoing relationships with wizards? Like, I'm really curious as to both the mechanical logistics and societal acceptance of those kinds of relationships. So, and then there's some of the specific things that we know exist within the wizarding world that, you stop and think about it, bring up a lot of questions when applied to sex. So take, for instance, the Animagus, the wizards and witches who can become a certain animal. Even though humanoid interspecies relationships appear to be acceptable, is it okay for a wizard while in an animal form, an Animagus in animal form, to have a sexual relationship with that species of animal? Is that considered bestiality? Is that a crime? Is that okay? Can an Animagus, while in animal form, become impregnated by that breed of animal? Even if they can't, if an Animagus who is already pregnant, when they transform into an Animagus, when they transform into their animal, does that change the fetus into the animal as well? And for a male animagus, while in animagus form, does that go down to the DNA level of their sperm? Does their ejaculate while in an animal form, is that gonna basically mean they would impregnate someone with an animal or with another wizard? I don't know. I think things could get potentially more than a little freaky, which then brings us to, what about the kink community? I mean, I would imagine even if sex standards and what is or isn't normal is probably quite different for wizards and witches. I mean, kink's a thing. People are kinky. I think some of the stuff I talked about with the Animagus probably falls under that, but here's a question for you. Given what we know about BDSM and bondage and punishment and those sorts of consensual but physically taxing relationships, is the casting of an unforgivable curse, like the Cruciatus curse, still a crime if it is cast on someone consensually as part of BDSM play? Because what we know about the unforgivable curse basically is you cast this, that is a crime. So is that truly regardless of circumstances? Are there underground BDSM wizard clubs where that kind of stuff is done, you know, in private? I would imagine something that's probably a huge hit, especially if there's any kind of underground use of it, but I would think in sexual play in general would be Polyjuice Potion. Polyjuice Potion brings up a lot of possibilities. I mean, first thing off the top of my head, I would imagine it would be incredibly popular to enhance, say, role-play scenarios for those who want to have that little extra thrill of acting, of pretending like they're with someone other than their normal partner while still actually technically being with the normal partner. But then we sort of come back to the question that I asked about some other stuff. Is it a sex crime? Because in this case, if you use Polyjuice Potion to impersonate someone, and then as that person, you get consent from someone else for sexual activity, but they think you're not who you are, within the wizarding world, is that a crime? Now, to be clear, any equivalent of that in the Muggle world is considered a crime because someone can't give informed consent if they have been deliberately deceived. Does sex crime law work the same way in the wizarding world? Because, yeah, I would imagine that would potentially be a really big problem, especially if it's not properly prosecuted. Also, coming back to the kink related, we also know because of what happened to Hermione when she accidentally ended up with cat hair instead of the hair of the person she was trying to impersonate, you can end up with human kind of animalish hybrids. So basically, furries can be a real thing in the Harry Potter world because of Polyjuice Potion. Even when I was jotting down my notes, that one hadn't occurred to me yet. Oh man, this is a rabbit hole. Oh god, that's a horrible turn of words for what I just said coming off of, Okay, okay, let's wrap it up on the last thing that at least I have notes on, love potions. What's the actual legality of love potions? We know that they are dangerous, and there seems to be an acknowledgement of them as being dangerous, but at the same time, they know how to make them. They talk about them in school. How legal are they? I mean, is just the use of a love potion in and of itself, is that a crime? Shouldn't it be? I mean, especially if something like the Imperious Curse to override someone's free will and control them, if that's an automatic crime, shouldn't a potion that forces someone's affections in a direction they might otherwise not be inclined automatically be a crime, regardless of what you sort of manipulate that person to do because of the love? Shouldn't that initial thing just be a crime? And in which case, why are they teaching why did we give this much information on love potions? I mean, granted, definitely on the movies, I don't think I can remember in the books if they were actually taught how to mix any love potions, but at the very least, they do have access to the information on how to make them, because there are some who try and spike Harry stuff with that in the 6th book and movie. So even if they're not flat out being taught, they have access to the materials and the know-how and how to make them. So that goes beyond just like an equivalent of, say, drug education where you warn kids about roofies. This is saying, here's the chemical components of roofies. Everything you need to make it is in this book. Oh, and the supplies are in that closet over there. I just have so many questions, none of which I ever expect to get answered because, yeah, I wouldn't expect J.K. Rowling to ever address my weird brain. But you folks get to hear about it. You're welcome. My thoughts on sex and the wizarding world of Harry Potter, apropos of nothing except my own bizarre thought processes. What do you think about all this that I have just thrown at you to try and digest? Have you had these thoughts before? Have I just destroyed your childhood? Whatever your thoughts are, drop them down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Whole bunch of stuff to do. Buttons, links, the Patreon's down there, my P.O. box is down there. I've got my Amazon wish list up in the videos that are up this month because it is my birthday. Otherwise, it's not normally there, but, you know. Hi! I appreciate it. Plus, there's other links to check out besides. Give a look at what's down there, or, you know what, don't. If you don't want to. It's okay, because at the end of the day, you're the council. I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned.